The Australian Mutuals Foundation was established in 2016 in order to, following the merger between what was then Encompass Credit Union and Select Credit Union, because we believed that part of our roles as cooperatives and credit union cooperatives is to give back to the communities. And we thought that the best way to do that was to establish a charitable organisation that can do work in Australia, overseas, and for disaster recovery from wherever it may be in Australia or around the world. So we established the Australian Mutuals Foundation, and I personally have, those who might not know me, but my name's Brian Bennett, and I had a 36-year career working in CEOs and senior management roles within credit cooperatives in Australia. And I'm very passionate about trying to help people establish their lives and lift them out of poverty and help alleviate poverty. And I have done work in the Pacific, Asia, and attended a lot of the World Council of Credit Union conferences to develop what I call a sustainable financial cooperative system. Because if you don't have a sustainable, rather than just government grants and AusAid and all this money, which is fantastic to do, but the people themselves, once the money stops, they don't have anything to go on with. You know, cooperatives have been around for a long, long time and built sustainable systems like dairy cooperatives, fishing cooperatives, financial cooperatives. But our community involvement is to give back to the communities we're involved with. We work closely with a charity called Barnardo's Australia. We don't try and replicate what they do. We just help them, and we have working bees, supporting days, and they do a very great job. Overseas, we work closely with an organisation called the Asian Confederation of Credit Unions, and we have had development programs in developing countries of Asia in terms of Bhutan, Myanmar, Laos, East Timor. So we're trying to help establish and develop financial cooperatives that will help people for the future. And the third objective is to have a vehicle where people can make donations when there is a disaster or a national disaster within Australia or overseas. And we've seen it with the bushfire appeal. We're just a vehicle to help those communities get back on their feet. You know, the poor bushfire communities have now been hit with a double whammy, which is the coronavirus as well. So communities have now been shut off from trying to support and help themselves going forward. So we actually launched that appeal, and we went through and got some corporate donations from some of our corporate sponsors, and we also got some money from just the general community or members of those organisations. With the help of the BCCM and the World Council of Credit Unions, we actually launched the appeal internationally. And what got me the most was that the international community actually, as part of the cooperative movement worldwide, came to our support. We're a developed country, and yet we had donations from South Korea, from UK, from America, from Canada, to help the bushfire communities as part of the cooperative credit union philosophy to help other people. Right now, we have some money. We've already donated $60,000 to Vinnie's, and that's already up to now. And we have some 200-odd thousand, I think 270,000. We want to donate to the communities affected by these bushfires.
We were being inundated by offers of support from cooperatives and mutuals in other parts of the world through the BCCM, and that solidarity is so heartening. But of course, concern for the community and cooperation amongst cooperatives are principles of the international cooperative movement. So how are we going to help those cooperatives and mutuals in bushfire impacted zones and the communities that rely on our mutuals and cooperatives in those areas?
In partnership with the BCCM, we formed a bushfire recovery team consisting of representatives from the BCCM, AMF, and mutuals who actually operate in those areas and those communities. And we're just working through the pros and cons of how we're going to give grants to those communities. We have, as I said, over $270,000, and it's really to get the business in those communities up and running again, because they will then employ people, they'll sell their goods, and create jobs and create the communities to get back. There's a strong community spirit in all those areas has been affected by the bushfires. And I think that's the good thing about Australia and Australians, is that we are very strongly minded and community minded. And we want to help each other, because they're going to take a long while to recover. People have lost homes, they've lost jobs, now the virus has hit. It's a real double whammy.
Recently, you went to Fiji to a United Nations symposium representing AMF, and you were there and represented BCCM as well in those talks. What was the interest in cooperatives and mutuals from the Fijian government and from the United Nations?
United Nations Sustainable Development in Asia Pacific countries. And there were representatives from a lot of the Pacific countries. They want and believe that they need help to establish their cooperatives and help them, have a sustainable system. It's no point having a system that's just going to be there for 1 or 2 years or 3 years or 4 years. They need it for 30 years. And Creditians have been in Fiji for probably, as far as I know, 30 or 40 years. So they've been around for a long time over there, but they need help and assistance. The cooperatives need help and assistance as well, especially the farming cooperatives, because most of those Pacific nations are agricultural based. And, we did visit a farming cooperative which exports fruit to New Zealand and to Australia. We have a role to help. Pacific is in our backyard. I think it's important that we have these sustainable cooperative systems. They have a very strong community basis over in those islands. Communities are what cooperatives are all about.